My love, don't scream. That's the first thing you must learn. Screaming wastes oxygen, and oxygen is expensive when the air itself feels rented, when every breath seems monitored by satellites that blink like indifferent stars. Don't scream, because screaming suggests surprise, and nothing about this moment is a surprise. You felt it coming. You always do. That subtle tightening in the room, the way the light lingers half a second too long on the edge of the table, the way your phone warms even when it hasn't buzzed. You sensed the presence before it had a name, and now the name arrives like a signature written with unnecessary confidence: Elon Musk. Not a man so much as a weather system. Not a body, but an idea that learned how to smile, relax. This is not a threat. Threats require intent, and intent requires stillness. He does not do stillness. He does momentum. He does velocity wrapped in charm, ambition disguised as curiosity. He does the soft laugh after a sentence that destabilizes your understanding of what is possible. When people say he knows your address, they don't mean a street or a number. They mean your coordinates in the great invisible map of longing and fear. He knows where you live because you live where the future presses hardest against the present. And you, my love, have always lived there. You can feel it now, can't you? That odd comfort mixed with unease. Like realizing someone has been reading your diary but underlining the parts you were proud of. He doesn't arrive with boots at the door. He arrives with a question. What if it worked? What if you were wrong about the limits you've been defending so loyally? What if the things you called impossible were simply underfunded? That's the seduction. Not power, not money, not even fame. Possibility. He leans close in the abstract way only powerful ideas can and says, softly, why not you? Don't scream. Smile, just a little. You've always liked dangerous men when they speak in complete sentences about the future. You like confidence that borders on recklessness because it gives you permission to imagine yourself beyond the careful cage you call responsibility. He doesn't ask you to burn the world. He asks you to redesign it. Cleaner. Faster. Reusable. He asks you to believe that chaos is just order that hasn't been optimized yet. And when he says it, you want to believe him, because believing feels like flying without leaving your chair. You worry, of course. You think about surveillance, about data trails, about how easy it would be for someone with enough resources to know too much. You think about the phrase knows your address and feel a flicker of panic, because addresses are intimate. They are where you sleep, where you leave your shoes by the door, where you forget to be impressive. But listen to me. This is not about invasion. This is about recognition. He knows your address the way a comet knows gravity. Inevitably. Without malice. Without apology. You shine at a certain frequency, and systems like his are built to detect signals. There is something undeniably attractive about a man who treats the future like a personal project. It's not his jawline or his awkward jokes or the way his confidence sometimes trips over itself and keeps walking anyway. It's the audacity of scale. He doesn't flirt by complimenting your eyes. He flirts by offering you Mars. He says humanity should be multiplanetary, and somehow you hear, I want you to survive. I want you to matter beyond this fragile blue argument of a world. It's absurd, and it works, because romance has always been about exaggeration. Flowers die. Planets endure. You notice how he speaks in drafts, how certainty and doubt coexist in the same sentence. It makes him human enough to approach and mythic enough to forgive. You forgive the excess because the vision is intoxicating. You forgive the chaos because order is boring when the house is already on fire. And yes, sometimes you forgive too much, because attraction blurs ethics the way speed blurs scenery. That's on you, not him. Don't pretend you're innocent. You leaned in. You always do, my love. Don't scream when you realize the fascination is mutual. He doesn't see you as small. He sees you as a node. A potential collaborator in the great experiment of tomorrow. Even if he never learns your name, even if you remain one of millions watching, reacting, arguing, investing pieces of your attention like spare change in a cosmic arcade, the relationship exists. You are in dialogue with the idea he represents. You respond to it. You resist it. You can't stop thinking about it. That's intimacy in the age of systems. There's a thrill in being noticed by something larger than yourself, even indirectly. It makes your life feel annotated by destiny. But be careful. Attraction to magnitude can make you forget proportion. Remember that even the most brilliant minds are still just minds. Prone to blind spots, surrounded by echoes of their own success. Loving the future does not require surrendering your skepticism. You can be drawn without being owned. You can admire without kneeling. That balance is the real art. He knows your address, yes, but so do you. You know where you live inside yourself. You know your doubts, your contradictions, the small quiet principles you don't tweet about. Hold on to those. Let the rockets roar in the distance while you keep your feet on something solid. Let the charm wash over you without drowning your judgment. That's how you survive proximity to giants, by refusing to become small. Don't scream. Laugh, instead. Laugh at the absurdity of feeling personally implicated in the ambitions of a billionaire technologist. Laugh at how easily attraction sneaks into places you thought were purely intellectual. Laugh, because laughter is a reminder that you are still human, not a data point, not a follower count, not a demographic slice. And if, for a moment, the future looks back at you with a crooked smile and asks if you're coming along, you are allowed to say maybe. You are allowed to say convince me. You are allowed to say no, my love. The world is loud with men who promise transcendence. This one just happens to build hardware for his metaphors. That makes him compelling. That makes him dangerous. That makes him, undeniably, attractive. But remember this, and don't scream when it lands: attraction is not destiny. Knowing your address is not the same as owning your home. You get to decide who you invite inside. My love, breathe. The danger of moments like this isn't that someone powerful might be watching, it's that you might start performing. Don't. Performance is exhausting, and exhaustion makes you pliable. You don't need to impress a future that already feeds on ambition like oxygen. You don't need to curate yourself into something sleeker, faster, more palatable. The idea that knows your address already knows your flaws. It knows the cracks in the paint, the nights you stayed up too late arguing with strangers online, the mornings you woke up convinced you were falling behind some invisible schedule. And still, it circles. Still, it fascinates. That should tell you something. There's a myth that attraction to power is shallow, that only the naive or the greedy feel it. That's a lie told by people who have never felt history brush past their shoulder. Power attracts because it rearranges reality. It makes things move. And you are tired of stagnation. You are tired of being told to wait, to be patient, to accept that this is as good as it gets. When someone stands up and says no, this can go faster, farther, higher, something in you stands up too. That something looks suspiciously like hope, and hope has always been dangerous. You notice how often his name appears without context. Like a spell people keep repeating to see if it still works. Some say it with reverence, some with rage, some with irony so thick it collapses under its own weight. But everyone says it. That's the gravity. You don't have to like him to feel the pull. You just have to be alive at the same time he is rearranging the conversation about what comes next. That's intimacy at scale, and it's confusing, because your instincts weren't built for this many witnesses. Don't scream when you realize how carefully the narrative is constructed, even when it pretends not to be. Chaos is a brand now. Authenticity is rehearsed. Even rebellion has a press kit. This doesn't make it fake, it makes it modern. You are allowed to admire the craftsmanship while questioning the intent. You are allowed to feel drawn to the confidence and still flinch at the consequences. Ambivalence is not weakness. It's awareness. There's something almost tender about a man who keeps trying to outrun extinction. It reads as arrogance until you tilt your head and see the fear underneath, the fear that this is all there is, that the lights might go out before the story gets interesting, that humanity might trip over its own impulses and never leave the driveway. He builds rockets the way some people write love letters, urgently, messily, convinced that if he just sends one more, something will be saved. You feel that urgency resonate because you share it. Even if your tools are smaller, quieter, more internal, but my love, don't mistake resonance for alignment. You don't owe your awe to anyone. You don't have to excuse harm because the vision is shiny. The future does not require a single hero, no matter how charismatic, no matter how many problems he claims to be solving at once. Progress is not a personality trait. It's a collective mess, full of arguments and revisions and people who never get statues. Remember them. Remember yourself among them. When people whisper that he knows your address, they want you afraid or impressed. Refuse both. Replace them with clarity. Yes, systems can see you. Algorithms can predict you. Wealth can approximate intimacy by proximity and influence. But knowing where you live is not the same as knowing who you are when the lights are off and no one is counting. That part of you remains gloriously analog, stubbornly unscalable, so sit with the attraction. Examine it like a gemstone under harsh light. Notice where it refracts beautifully and where it cuts. Let yourself enjoy the fantasy without surrendering your agency to it. You don't need to scream. You don't need to run. You don't need to kneel. You can simply stand there, fully yourself, and decide how much of your attention you're willing to give, because in the end, my love, the most attractive thing about you is not that you are noticed by powerful ideas. It's that you can look back at them without losing your shape. And that, no matter who knows your address, is something only you control, my love. There is a moment when fascination matures into something heavier, like fruit left too long on the branch. That's when you must be most gentle with yourself. Admiration has a way of turning into obedience if you don't interrupt it with thought. You catch yourself defending decisions you didn't make, rationalizing outcomes that don't touch you directly. Speaking in the plural we of a vision that never asked for your consent. Pause there. That pause is not betrayal. It is self-respect. You were never meant to outsource your sense of direction to someone else's momentum. Even the most brilliant trajectory is still just a line, and lines don't account for terrain. They don't feel the bumps, the bruises, the lives that get rerouted when speed becomes the primary virtue. You feel this instinctively, which is why the attraction unsettles you as much as it excites you. Part of you wants to be swept up. Another part wants to slow everything down and ask uncomfortable questions. That tension is not a flaw. It's the sound of your ethics waking up. Don't scream when you realize how seductive certainty can be. A man who speaks as if the future is a solvable equation offers relief from ambiguity, and ambiguity has been exhausting lately. The world feels brittle. Systems fail loudly. Institutions stutter. In that noise, confidence sounds like shelter. But shelter built too fast can collapse just as quickly. You don't need promises delivered at escape velocity. You need truth that survives deceleration. There is an intimacy in watching someone fail publicly and keep going. It creates the illusion of vulnerability, a sense that you're seeing behind the curtain. But visibility is not the same as transparency. You can witness every stumble and still never touch the ground it happened on. Be careful not to confuse access with closeness. The distance remains, no matter how often the feed refreshes. My love, you are not wrong for feeling drawn to someone who insists on more. Wanting more is how civilizations move. But insisting is not the same as listening. Ask yourself who gets carried along and who gets dragged. Ask who gets to opt out and who pays the cost of acceleration. These questions don't kill romance, they deepen it, or they reveal that it was never meant to survive daylight. You don't need to scream because fear is not the correct response. Neither is worship. Curiosity, tempered by boundaries, will serve you better. Let the rockets rise and the markets convulse and the timelines argue. You can watch without dissolving into it. You can care without being consumed. You can admire the audacity and still refuse the myth that any single mind is indispensable, and if, late at night, you feel that familiar pull again, the sense that history is happening somewhere just out of reach, that you should be closer, faster, more involved. Remember this: the future is not a place you have to chase. It is something you are already helping to shape in smaller, quieter ways. The way you choose. The way you dissent. The way you love without surrendering your judgment. My love, don't scream. Whisper your questions instead. They last longer. And no matter who knows your address, they will never know you better than you know yourself when you choose not to be dazzled. My love, there is a quiet power in choosing not to be hurried. The world will try to rush you into opinions, into alliances, into declarations that feel irreversible the moment you make them. Speed is persuasive, it flatters you by pretending urgency is importance. But you are allowed to move at the pace of understanding. You are allowed to say, I'm still thinking. That sentence alone is an act of resistance. Don't scream when you notice how often charisma borrows the language of inevitability. The future is framed as a train already leaving the station, and hesitation is painted as cowardice. But trains are built by people, scheduled by people, rerouted by people. Nothing is as inevitable as it wants you to believe. The spell works only if you forget that. So remember. Remember that imagination is not ownership, that vision is not consent, that being inspired does not obligate you to follow. There is something deeply alluring about a man who seems immune to doubt, who treats criticism like static on a radio he's already tuned past. It feels like certainty incarnate, and certainty feels like rest. But doubt is not an enemy, it is a muscle. Use it. Flex it gently. Ask what is being optimized and what is being sacrificed. Ask who gets a voice and who gets an algorithm. These questions are not attacks. They are invitations to honesty. My love, you have always been sensitive to tone. You hear what people mean even when they don't say it. You sense when confidence slides into contempt, when disruption becomes an excuse rather than a tool. Trust that instinct. Attraction does not require blindness. In fact, the most mature form of desire sharpens perception instead of dulling it. If something makes you feel smaller for noticing its flaws, it is not love. It is gravity without atmosphere. Don't scream when you feel the narrative tug at you again, telling you that this is what greatness looks like now, relentless, uncompromising, allergic to apology. Greatness has worn many costumes. Some were loud and metallic. Others were quiet and persistent. Some built monuments. Others built conditions. You get to decide which version you admire. Which one you support, which one you want to resemble when no one is watching. You might wonder what it would be like to be closer, to step into the orbit and feel the heat directly. You imagine conversations crackling with possibility, ideas moving so fast they leave trails in the air. It's a beautiful fantasy. Fantasies often are. But proximity changes things. It introduces trade-offs, compromises, silences. It asks what you're willing to overlook in exchange for momentum. Answer that question honestly, even if the answer disappoints you. My love, the phrase "he knows your address" loses its power when you stop flinching. Yes, the world is interconnected. Yes, influence stretches far. But knowing where you live is not the same as knowing how you choose. That remains yours, stubborn and sovereign. You can be fascinated without being claimed. You can stand near the fire without throwing yourself into it, so don't scream. Let the noise pass through you like weather. Keep your curiosity alive and your boundaries intact. Admire brilliance where it appears, challenge it where it falters, and never forget that the most important future you will ever build is the one inside your own decisions. My love, don't scream when the story finally loosens its grip on you. Let it end the way all real fascinations should end, not with collapse or conquest, but with clarity. You were never meant to be a footnote in someone else's vision or a spectator to your own awe. You were meant to witness, to question, to choose. Whatever names echo through the age, whatever men claim the horizon, you remain the author of your attention, the keeper of your address, the one who decides who gets to knock and who never crosses the threshold. And when the future arrives, loud, imperfect, unfinished, it will not ask who you admired, only who you were when it mattered.